This week on The Destination Angler.
I like to fish shorter miles distance so that we can take our time. So we can scout. A lot of times we get out and hike and look at the water that we're gonna fish and just kind of like stock and spot and stock and just watch. And that's really fun. I have some really fun sight casting spots. We get up on a cliff and have lunch and take our time watching the cutthroat come from the bottom of the river, and they're coming up 20 feet. You could see them come up in the clear water and eat,
On
caddis
top.
on the surface. Yeah.
That was Hilary Hutcheson on the Flathead River. Welcome to the Destination Angler Podcast, the podcast for anglers who travel. And I'm your host, Steve Haig. We go right to the source, the local guides and experts, to build your knowledge of top fishing locations around North America. It's a big world out there. Now go and fish it.
I'm going away for a while, but I'll be back soon. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Hey anglers, welcome back to another episode of the Destination Angler, brought to you by Got Fishing, crafting world-class fly fishing adventures specially designed for your level of experience and budget. By Trout Routes, the #1 fishing app, helping trout anglers avoid the crowds and explore new public water. Download it today in the App Store and get 20% off using the promotion code DESTINATION20. And by Adams Built Fishing Gear, the trusted source for quality fly fishing gear built to last at an affordable price. And by Angler's Coffee, fueling your next cast with amazing coffee delivered to your doorstep one batch at a time. Get started today and save 20%. Up next on the Destination Angler, we stick around the great state of Montana for another Montana gem, the Stillwater River, for some fantastic dry fly fishing. Then we journey to the wild and remote St. Joe River in the Idaho Panhandle. And be sure to backcast to catch the last episode of the Destination Angler on the North Platte River and Gray Reef with Blake Jackson, co-owner of the Ugly Bug Fly Shop, Casper, Wyoming. Gray Reef is one of the great tailwaters of the West with oversized football-shaped trout and plenty of solitude. You won't want to miss these shows. And today our destination is the wild and scenic Flathead River in northern Montana. And our guest is industry activist and outfitter Hilary Hutcheson, who specializes in what she calls high adrenaline whitewater fly fishing. The Flathead River originates in some of the most stunning and remote scenery in the West. Here anglers will find crystal clear water, plentiful populations of native westslope cutthroat trout, and incredible dry fly fishing. Hilary began her guiding career as a teenager and later worked as a television news anchor and reporter in Portland. Today she guides in the Flathead River and the Middle Fork of the Salmon River and owns Lary's Fly and Supply, which is a fly shop in her hometown of Columbia Falls, Montana. Highly active in the industry, she serves on multiple boards, has testified on Capitol Hill, and is an award-winning filmmaker, journalist, and contributing editor at Fly Fisherman Magazine. Today we hear stories of bone crusher rapids, grizzly bears, and a client with a superhuman bladder, along with Hilary's philosophy on training guides and her recent testimony on Capitol Hill. Stick around to the end for a preview of her new movie. So grab your helmet, folks, and life jacket because this one's going to be a wild ride. Let's hear from Hilary. Well, man, Hilary, we got a lot to talk about today. How you doing?
Great. You're looking forward to it.
Yeah, welcome to the show. Really appreciate you doing this.
No worries. I'm happy to be here.
And you're in Dillon, Montana today because you've been where today?
Yeah. So Dillon is, for me, kind of a fishing mecca. It's all great rivers around here. But my oldest daughter goes to school here. She's in college studying sustainability at University of Montana Western. So any excuse I get to come visit this area, I'll do it. But was doing a talk last night at the Patagonia Outlet. It's located here in Dillon about the different fisheries challenges all across the country and how those connect us.
Okay, so the secret to getting you to appear somewhere is to make sure it's where your kids already
Yes.
are. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
There's a pro tip for everybody out there who wants to talk to Hilary.
The kids are always very annoyed because it should be that I'm just coming there to see them only. And so I'm like, I'm coming to see you. Yay. And they're like, awesome. What talk are you doing? Or
Yeah,
what?
like, okay, Mom, we're on to you, Mom. That's kind of funny. Well, I've seen your articles, been reading your articles for years in Fly Fisherman Magazine. And I want to first start with this, what you call high adrenaline whitewater fly fishing thing. What is that all about?
Yeah, I think the reason whitewater fly fishing is my specialty and just kind of the thing I prefer in my jam is just because of my geography. Where I grew up and where I am now is on the middle fork of the Flathead and the north fork of the Flathead, super dynamic water, very aerated, lots of rapids, really fun. And that's just where I grew up. So I've been running those rivers forever. And I think had I grown up in Dillon on the Big Hole or Beaverhead, that might very likely be my favorite water, but the Flathead is for sure because it's my backyard and it's where I'm most comfortable. But it's really what I think is the most fun thing in the entire world is running whitewater. I mean, rafting is a lot of people would say different from fly fishing, and I don't see that. I think that they're together. And so where there's water, there's fish, and there's fish, there's fly fishing typically. And so that's how I see, these whitewater rivers is great fishing opportunities and also super healthy opportunities for fish, cold, typically, free stones, free flowing rivers and lots of aeration and dynamic stuff. And, people, I don't advocate that people pull fish through whitewater. You really have to understand that fishing whitewater is different and know how to do it and why you do it differently. And it can be a really awesome experience for people.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about the experience. Like, what's a typical day? So you're out on the river. I don't know. Walk me through a day. I'd love to hear more about this.
Yeah. Well, there's dynamic rivers, but also there's dynamic experiences when you're in an area like the Flathead. So the Flathead River has 3 forks of the Flathead and the South Fork, North Fork, and Middle Fork. I guide on the Middle Fork and the North Fork. Those 2 rivers mark essentially the boundaries of Glacier National Park, Middle Fork being the southern boundary, North Fork being the western boundary, kind of, not exactly, but really close where they meet up. They go down a little ways and then the South Fork joins in and you're in the main stem and it goes all the way to Flathead Lake. And so for starters, you're surrounded by 2.5 million acres of wilderness. So it's an awesome wilderness experience at the crown of the continent. And folks are really starting to recognize that competitive edge, that bucket list piece as being one of the last remaining places on the planet you can catch a native westslope cutthroat trout in an intact ecosystem.
Yeah, what's that mean, intact ecosystem for everybody?
Yeah. So essentially, it means that we haven't lost any of our native species and we haven't introduced any. And that's for all flora and fauna and wildlife, so it's plants and animals together and in an intact ecosystem. It's technically relatively intact because you'll see some knapweed along some of the roadways and things that kind of come in on trains and cars. And then also we don't have the woodland bison inside the park anymore. Bison are out on the plains. So a couple little things like that make it relatively intact instead of fully intact, but still it's one of the last remaining relatively intact ecosystems on the planet. And certainly in this area, really the only place you can catch a native wild westslope cutthroat trout in that kind of ecosystem, meaning you're not going to see, brown trout and bass and pike up in the same areas in that ecosystem. And I love all those fish. I love fishing for non-native fish. I love these wild fish that maybe aren't originally from here, but are super fun to catch, in other places. I think this particular ecosystem, that's its special competitive edge is relatively intact.
These rivers are part of being intact is they're undammed too, correct?
Exactly. Yeah. So free flowing, part of the Wild and Scenic River Corridor, Wild and Scenic marking some of the highest levels of federal protection for rivers that you can get. The South Fork of the Flathead has a dam, and so it does have Wild and Scenic River designation at its headwaters above, but the original dam was supposed to be on the Middle Fork, and the Craighead brothers back in the 50s worked to not just protect that river, but also establish this federal designation of Wild and Scenic Rivers Act of 1968. It's pretty great because it protects what I feel like in my area is a lot of water, but when you look at it nationwide, it's fewer than 1/4% of the nation's rivers are protected under that designation. And so we're very lucky to be able to have, 3 rivers in our area that fall under that designation. They're protected. really only 5 in the entire state of Montana.
Right,
But
I saw
that's a
that.
lot. 5 is a lot
Yeah.
compared to what the rest of the nation has or doesn't have. So yeah, I really encourage people to look up wild and scenic, because certainly there's probably water around where you are that could potentially be added to the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act.
Yeah, and this is your office. This you get to welcome
Yeah.
people to this every day, or
Yeah.
during the summers anyway. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I know. It's not lost on me. Like
Yeah.
every day I'm out there, I'm not Pollyanna about it. This is perfect. This place is perfect. It's not perfect, but I really appreciate it every day I'm out there.
Yeah. Okay, so someone calls you and says, Hilary Hutcheson, I've heard she's a great guide. I think I want to go fishing with her. And they call you up. Do you talk
Yeah.
to all your clients? Do you try to weed them out a little bit, kind of talk them out of
Yeah.
it maybe? What's the conversation like?
Right. Well, yeah. For starters, I feel like I didn't answer your last question, which is like, what is a day in the life? So I was
Sure.
kind of saying the place. And so because you're asking about how, when people book, what happens, I'll go kind of through an actual
Please.
day in the life. So I've got a fly shop in town. This is my hometown where I grew up in. And it's Columbia Falls, Montana is my town. And my fly shop is called Lary's Fly and Supply. Lary's is spelled Larys, which is short for Hilary. Hi, Larry.
I saw
So,
that.
yeah, it's silly, but there's a little story behind it that we can talk about another time. But so people can call the fly shop as you would normally call a fly shop to book. I don't do online booking because I feel like a really good river experience starts in reservations. So being able to talk to a person about what you want out of your day and where you're going and what's going to happen, and that what is a day on the river like is so important to happen before you get out there in this particular area. This is a unique fishery. And sometimes people say, oh, well, I fish all over Southwest Montana, or I fished in Idaho, or I fished in Alabama, or whatever. I can promise you this place is going to be different. And most places are. This isn't necessarily a better place, but it's different from wherever you typically fish. And I love that about fly fishing anyway. Everywhere you go is going to be different.
Yeah.
So as a rule, I personally go, when I'm going somewhere to go fishing, right into the fly shop, the local fly shop right away, and just start asking questions and learning. And even before I show up in town, you can bet I'm on the website looking and calling and trying to find information about that particular area, because you can't ever go in like, oh, well, I fish, so I'm going to get dialed. So people call the fly shop, they'll talk to Eben. Eben's my partner, and also he's the manager of the fly shop. And so he's really great about knowing not only the water inside and out and asking the right questions to make sure that our guests are set up with the right water for them, but also with the right guide. We've got guides who are super good with beginners. We've got some who are super good with intermediates. We've got some who are experts with expert anglers. Some are excellent with kids, and some guides like certain water better. So if somebody wants to go on whitewater, then he kind of can fit the right guide with them. If somebody really wants a mellow, flat water experience, if somebody just wants to see animals, or if somebody is just wants to learn, doesn't care about catching fish, or if somebody really wants to catch a big fish, whatever that kind of expectation might be, those expectations are really dialed in the beginning. And so Eben will dial that in, including figuring out if they're going to go up into the forks, into the whitewater stretch through my outfit Glacier Raft Company and Glacier Anglers, or kind of lower river, the mellow part through Lary's Fly and Supply.
Okay.
So lots of different options. So they call, I'm not in the fly shop, working in the fly shop very often. I'm in there sometimes, I'm in there a lot, hanging out and after trips and talking to people and stuff, but I don't work in the fly shop just because I'm on the river. So I guide every day from May until end of September.
Really?
Yeah, no, I don't take any days off just because it's like feast or famine, summertime is make hay while the sun shines. So I'm not answering the phone in the fly shop for sure, but I feel like I'm always kind of around there. So I get the questions if they're saying who would be good for this trip or that trip. I'm always kind of around there. And same thing if they call Glacier Raft Company and Glacier Anglers in West Glacier, which is just 20 minutes away from Columbia Falls, up in the outskirts of Glacier National Park in West Glacier in the west entrance. If they call there, and they can mention me and say, if they did want an email back or a call back or something, I'm easy to find. But that has a big reservation staff also trained to answer those questions. So the reservations team, half a dozen experts there answering the phone every day. And they'll put you with the right person for sure. So then you can choose half-day trips, full-day trips, multi-day trips, backcountry wilderness trips. And I think in a lot of ways that day would look like a lot of other trips people maybe have taken fly fishing, in terms of you get in, truck with your guide and go to the spot, and then we've got shuttle systems and everything, and then you kind of are coming down the river to the takeout. And what happens during that day with the whitewater fly fishing and just kind of dynamic pieces of river, that part is the part that's a little different.
That's a little bit. We'll talk a little bit more about that, because your customers who are doing this whitewater stuff, they have to wear a life preserver and a helmet. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct in certain stretches.
Okay.
So when we go into the upper Middle Fork of the Flathead, which is our multi-day wilderness trip in the Great Bear Wilderness, which is part of the Bob Marshall Wilderness Complex in the Flathead National Forest, that is a hike in or pack in with mules. In high water seasons, we can do a fly in into a backcountry ranger station at Schaefer Meadows in the wilderness. And then the float out is class 4 whitewater. And, with some classified 5 technical situations too. So class 4 whitewater is definitely like a scouting situation where guides will eddy out before the rapid and go down and have to look at it. Part of being wild and scenic means you can't manipulate the river if there's an obstruction. So we're not in there with chainsaws cutting logs out that might be across the river. And often there are things that happen in the night or before we've gone in where you might have an obstruction, like a new rock has created a different piece of the river obstruction, or maybe there's a tree in the way, or maybe somebody else had some carnage and there's like a sunken craft or something has happened,
Yeah.
Last year there was a horse that had fallen off a trail and was like in the rapid. So yeah, like there's sometimes, wild animals are in the way and stuff sometimes too. I guess we would be in the way of the wild animals, but
maybe.
Sometimes they're there. So scouting for sure. And then if the clients want to ride through some of those bigger rapids with us, they're for sure wearing helmets and life jackets. And we are too. We're wearing helmets and life jackets. We as guides.
Are you fishing?
Not fishing through the Nar really. We'll fish up to it and run it. And then there's really good fishing between each rapid. So the river pool and drop. So you go through a rapid and then it pulls out and it's super fishy, really great fishing between, and then pull and drop and pull and drop. So we fish between those rapids. We don't fish through the rapids for a couple of reasons. One, even if you're an expert angler and you can get that fish to the net before, we get out of an eddy or something, the risk of having to pull a fish through that and essentially kind of drown them. That sounds silly to say that a fish could drown, but run their exhaustion levels and their gills, I think is something we don't want to do. So we don't pull fish through whitewater. And then also I have found out the hard way when I was much younger that it happens so fast if a client does get a snag on a rock or a stick or a tree or a fish and that rod goes under the boat. That's Jesus take the wheel. Like,
do they go with the rod often, like right over?
Sometimes, usually they throw their rod and then you got to deal with that. But sometimes we've had clients like, go out of the boat or come and get in my oars and they're on my lap and they're like jumping over my back and like trying to, it's just chaos. So usually I just ask them to keep it tight, just stay, hands, feet, and other objects to yourself, rods down, and get through the whitewater. Hang on. Yep.
That sounds cool. With so much information out there, it can get downright confusing and even overwhelming to find the right fishing adventure. Sorting through all the options and fees can be quite the headache. Well, not anymore. I'm super excited to introduce Got Fishing. Got Fishing is a boutique booking agency for world-class fishing adventures around the world. They ensure that you are on the exact fishing trip that meets your skill level, budget, and desired experience. Whether you're a seasoned angler or new to the sport, Got Fishing's personalized service will help you decide which adventure is the best fit for you, your group, or even your business. Worry about fees? Worry no more. With Got Fishing, you won't pay anything extra because their services are entirely free for you. You see, Got Fishing exclusively partners with highly reputable outfitters who gladly compensate them for their services, ensuring a win-win situation. Explore the range of fishing adventures and learn more about the services Got Fishing provides at gotfishing.com. That's www.gotfishing.com. And check them out on Instagram too. Do you struggle finding new trout streams to explore? Tired of stumbling around country roads looking for access points? Looking to escape the crowds? Then look no further, because Trout Routes has meticulously mapped and classified over 50,000 trout streams covering the entire lower 48, including 350,000 hand-curated public access points marked and ready for you to explore. I'm a huge fan of Trout Routes because they make it so easy to explore new trout waters. Many times, Trout Routes has helped me find new public water and get into fish fast. And the good folks at Trout Routes have been busy this winter making Trout Routes even better. Enter Stream Cards 2.0, the latest iOS release that brings together more info at your fingertips by organizing data like stream flows, access laws, nearest fly shops into easily accessible tabs for every river and stream in the app. Planning a trip? Well, you'll love the advanced filter features that let you hone in on top-rated streams, boat ramps, camping spots, and more. So what are you waiting for? Start exploring today by downloading Trout Routes on your Apple or Android phone. Now, you also float the Middle Fork of the Salmon, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Is that similar?
Super similar, and which is why it works for me. I don't advise for everybody that running a whitewater river cold, especially professionally, is a good idea. But the Middle Fork of the Salmon, for me, behaves very similarly to the Middle Fork of the Flathead. It's also pull and drop. It's really got a similar whitewater level. It's very dynamic and in its freestone, mannerisms, but it's 300 rapids in 100 miles.
300, really?
300 rapids, yep. Mm-hmm.
Wow,
and it's wild and scenic as well in the Frank Church River of No Return Wilderness. But one of the differences is on the Flathead, we have wild, scenic, and recreation classifications of that designation. And the wild stretch is really small. That's that upper Middle Fork of the Flathead and the wilderness. And then you get down into the scenic, which is a little closer to roads, and then into recreation, which is really driving the local economy and larger economy, because so many people are coming because of, this ecosystem that this big river is a part of. And but the Middle Fork of the Salmon is almost all wild. So that means no roads.
Love it.
Yeah, no mechanical advantage, engines and generators and all of that kind of stuff. There's one little section where there's a ranch that is designated as scenic, but the rest of it is all wild, 100 miles from beginning to end. And we run that whole 100 miles, but typically we'll deadhead as guides for 2.5 days, which it means just the guides bringing the boats down from the headwaters, or from kind of the first put in rather, which is called Boundary Creek, and then meet up with the clients where they've flown into a place called Indian Creek, and then they'll be coming down with us for 60 miles, not 100.
Okay.
So we'll do that first 40 with just guides, which is so fun. I love deadheading.
Yeah.
It's like a little, the only vacation that I'll have in the entire summer.
That first 40 miles without, yeah.
Yeah. And the reason we do that is because, one, for fly fishing, 100 miles is long, really long for clients. And then two, it's just when the fly fishing gets good there in the later season, once the big water is dropped, it's really technical and bony and
is it?
Really, super technical. And really, I would say challenging or stressful maybe for clients who are just trying to have fun. Yeah, it's really hard. It's hard for me, which is why I wanted to start going there. I really appreciate the challenge, and I feel like you just have to keep challenging yourself. I love, my home water, the Middle Fork of the Flathead, but getting to go on the Middle Fork of the Salmon was, professionally, I think for me, like a big professional challenge. And since I only guest guide there, I go for 1 week every year in August. I'm running it, not multiple times in the summer.
Right.
So I
Yeah,
have
yeah,
to
yeah.
be on. Like, so I try to get super fit ahead of time, like drink a lot of water, get sleep,
Lift weights.
lift weights, pockets full of snacks.
I can't imagine you're rowing that boat every day and trying to do back eddy, rowing backwards to keep a boat in a back eddy. Your back must be pretty strong to be able to do all that.
Yeah, the older I get, the more aware I am of it for sure. And I know it has a shelf life. So trying to, and I've known for a long time, it has a shelf life.
Yeah, yeah. We got a lot of irons in the fire. I got a feeling you're going to find something else to do, no problem.
Yeah, I think it's important to figure out an exit plan to guiding, at least, like my mom said, she's like, well, you don't have to guide on the Middle Fork of the Salmon or the Middle Fork of the Flathead, but I just want to. And so I think
it's cool.
that's a hard thing, is to try to start to make it, like, to change what you want, or to be okay with that change, or to just go, like, even if just because you can doesn't mean you should, or even though you want to, is it the responsible thing to do?
Yeah.
And at some point, it's not going to be. I mean, I'm almost 50, so.
Well, don't go anywhere yet. All right. There's still a lot of people that want to go with you, I'm sure. All right. So this country where you're fishing flows through, you already mentioned some of these places: Glacier National Park, right on the edge of that, Great Bear Wilderness, Bob Marshall Wilderness. I mean, can you even begin to describe the scenery to the people that maybe haven't been out here?
Sometimes when we're up there and I'm taking pictures on my phone, and my clients are like, you've never seen this before? That's kind of how I feel, is that I haven't in my mind. It's like new every single time. And I think that's just because it blows my mind every single time, And so I'm always very, very impressed with it. I mean, I grew up here. This is my home water. I'm there every day, and it's that fascinating. And I also, even though I know it inside and out, feel a lot of ways that I find new pieces of it every day that I'm there.
Really?
I find something that I hadn't noticed before. And then I really get into a pattern of, like, trying to figure that piece out. And then the other thing that happens that I think makes this so cool is, and all the guides will tell you, it is a new river, not only every single year, but can be week to week, sometimes day to day, because it being freestone and so dynamic, and have big subterranean aquifer and lots of braids and canyons and so many things. It literally changes.
Yeah.
So if you have a big water year, that's going to change a lot of the river's behavior. You'll get new rapids pop up. There's also a fault under there. And so sometimes, like, there's little earthquakes that kind of change some of the rapids. We've had on the 10-mile whitewater commercial stretch, where we run half-day paddle raft trips on the Middle Fork of the Flathead, we've had rapids change drastically since I first started. I first started in high school and running gear boats, when I was a kid, a freshman in high school, and the places that literally had the rapids, we named rapids, aren't there literally at all.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, they've changed. New rapids have popped up. We've given them new names, and, it changes just because it is wild. And that's so cool. Like, that's the thing I love. It's literally wild. It has its own behavior, personality.
Hey anglers, if you're on the hunt for fishing gear that's as tough as you are, look no further than Adams Built Fishing Gear. Since 2014, Adams Built has been the go-to choice for anglers who demand quality without breaking the bank. Their lineup of lightweight waders, high-quality nets, and meticulously designed fly boxes is second to none. But here's what really impressed me. Adams Built stands behind their products like no other. Every single item is guaranteed to last. Yep, you heard that right. And get this, Adams Built waders even come with a lifetime repair replace guarantee, with you only paying for shipping. Now that's a deal you can't beat. So why settle for gear that won't last? Make the smart choice and gear up with Adams Built Fishing Gear today. Ask your local dealer for Adams Built, or visit www.adamsbuiltfishing.com and tell them Steve sent you from the Destination Angler podcast. Hey folks, Angler's Coffee wants to fuel your next cast with great coffee delivered to your doorstep, one batch at a time. Anglers has been hard at work making great new coffee blends, such as the Stimulator Blend. This high-octane coffee has a delicious smoky flavor with 25% more caffeine. You know, sometimes you just need a little extra kick in the morning before you wet a line. Or how about the Rainbow Blend? Colorful and bright, this medium roast draws inspiration from the vibrant traits of the iconic fish. Much like the rainbow trout's vivid hues, you'll experience flavor reminiscent of the brilliant colors the trout is named for. And if you like it dark and bold, check out the Brown Trout Blend. This roast brings the spirit of the elusive brown trout with rich, dark chocolate notes, boldly intertwined with subtle smokiness, mirroring the rugged landscapes of the deep waters where brown trout thrive. And with every sip of Angler's Coffee, you support great conservation groups and charities such as the Mayfly Project. So head on over to anglerscoffee.com and fuel up today. Take 20% off your first subscription order by entering the code BREW20 at checkout. Speaking of wild, you're in grizzly bear country. I think you've probably gotten some mountain lions, wolves maybe. I don't know. What else am I missing? Have you run into these critters on a regular basis?
Lions, tigers, and bears, oh my. Yeah, for sure. It's in terms of bears, it's not like you go up to Alaska or like Brooks Range and you see like bears eating, salmon and stuff. Our bears are true omnivores. Like they're really not the meat eaters of the media or things that you see. They're more like they like their, grubs and moth larvae, and voles and berries and roots. So we see grizzly bears, but they're not up close. Like they're sometimes cruising through on a ridge and we're super excited to see them.
Yeah, I bet.
If you see a grizzly bear, it's really fun and very exciting. And it's really, for me, maybe a handful of grizzly bears in the summer. Definitely not every day. We'll see a lot more black bears, and even they aren't like coming into camp. We're very bear aware. So it's the kind of place where they definitely can and have come into camp and can change their of your day for sure, but it's not a regular occurrence. So we have, by Forest Service and mandate, and also by our own company policies, we use the locking coolers. So we first started using Yeti coolers the second they came out with the bear proof, certification. The second we saw that, we were like, oh, we don't have to hoist all of our stuff up in a tree anymore. For me, as like a small guide when I was, young, it was like, I think Yeti's been out for 17 years now. And we got like the first ones because we were like, oh, they're bear, have the certification that the Forest Service agrees with. So the Forest Service manages our river trips. And so they're like, yeah, you have to have a locking cooler. So we bolt them. So there's like,
oh, you do
bolts, you have to have a hardware bolt in the holes of the Yeti cooler. So we do that. So we bolt them. And then we also have bear fences that we provide on our overnights. And so we basically move our kitchen into the bear fence, and it's electric bear fence that goes around the kitchen as well. So it's pretty precautionary, but it's mostly, it's the same mentality as the way we run whitewater, like, low risk, high consequence. It's like probably nothing's going to happen, but if it did, it's going to be gnarly. Like you're going to be there all day. Like if you flip your raft, it's going to be a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And same thing, if you let a bear into camp, it's trips over, something's going to happen. Right. So we really try to work on mitigating risk at all.
Have you had a raft go over with a client?
Yes.
Yeah, a couple times.
This was when I was 23 years old. I was 23 and on a whitewater paddle raft trip. So I just had a husband and a wife and a 12-year-old daughter, and in a big 14-foot. No, it was like one of our biggest air rafts, typically for a 10 to 13 people. So
yeah, really,
if I'm remembering. No, if I was 23, it would have been Old Shoshone. So it was like before we had self-bailing air brand rafts. So this is way back. I feel like I was 23 yesterday, but this is a long time ago. So
Me
it would
too.
have been a non, yeah, it would have been a non-self-bailing Shoshone raft, rubber raft that like it really tacos, Yeah, old raft.
Tacos. What's that? They fold in half and they get caught in a big wave or something.
Yeah, yeah. Now the big, heavy kind of PVC style rafts can plow through whitewater, but those Shoshones would really go up into waves and kind of bend and
Taco.
yeah, taco. So
Oh no.
I remember it was like a microburst day, like really, really gusty wind coming upriver in the canyon, John Stevens Canyon on the Middle Fork. And I just hit the main wave of the first rapid and tunnel rapid. And I remember seeing the nose of the boat come up like this. And it was just like in my mind, oh, we're dump trucking. Like the nose of the boat came up and and I'm not blaming the clients at all. It's a paddle raft trip. So I'm back on the guide stick and I have a husband and wife. So two paddlers up front and their daughter kind of sitting in the middle, not paddling.
Yeah.
And the second we hit the first wave, and I'm yelling all forward hard, meaning they just need to like dig
Paddle,
in.
you guys.
It's not a huge rapid, but you have to paddle to get over the wave. And they both stopped and like grabbed their daughter and held the center chinny line.
Oh no.
And no paddling. And so we didn't get over the wave. We just surfed it. And I just remember hitting it and this big microburst. I mean, it was a huge gust of wind at the same time. And I'm in the back and I'm just watching it. And so now I'm yelling high side front. Usually a high side is going to be high side left or high side right up on a rock.
Oh yeah.
You get everybody up on that high side to push down. But when I saw it, I'm like, oh, we need to high side the wave. So I'm yelling high side and they're looking like, no,
yeah, right. I'm not moving.
They understood the command, but they were like,
not
no,
moving.
I'm gonna do it. And we just dump trucked straight back and everybody's swimming. The boat's overturned. The next rapid is where they take your picture in Bone Crusher Rapid. And so the photographer sees my raft go through the next rapid upside down. And all my shit's just
really
for sale. I didn't have, and this is like pretty low water, end of the season in August. And I'm super cocky, 23 years old, nothing strapped down. I have like my water bottles aren't strapped down and like stuff's just like
garage sale.
around. Yeah. And just pieces of my trip are coming through and they're taking pictures. And I'm yelling at everybody to swim river right. And everybody's fine.
Oh, they all made it. Good.
They all made it.
Okay.
They all made it. And I remember the little girl was like, we broke your record because I had mentioned that I had never flipped before, which is saying that is the kiss of death.
I was gonna say, don't say that, right?
Have or you will. Yeah. So I remember jinxing myself, but that's the only time I've never flipped a paddle. Like I've never flipped an oar rig, just that paddle raft. So I've never flipped an oar rig, knock on wood, but have come dang close.
I'll bet.
Lots of times.
Hilly, what, so that might be not a good day on the river. What's a great day on the river for you? What's that look like?
Yeah. I mean, at the risk of sounding very petty, weather, really can mark a great day. So I love getting up in the morning and looking at the forecast and going like, oh, like we're set up to win, like very little W, no R, like beautiful, like just happy weather.
Yeah, right.
I think is great. We've had some pretty dramatic weather in our area for several years now. And so just like a nice mellow weather day, I already know it's going to be a great day. Another thing that I think makes a great day is when we've talked about honest expectations together with clients. I've called the clients, the night before. Most of the time I know them and we've built a relationship so that when they explain what they want out of that day, like I know exactly, what's going to happen. And so I think setting up those expectations for the day, including like some of my clients might want to get off the water a little earlier, or like they're saying, can we do something specific? Like have clients who have been on all the pieces of water with me and they're saying, can we find a walkway, which I'm a boat person. And so they're like, can we find a walkway? Like we can even take the boat to get to a spot to maybe hike up a tributary or
Oh,
something.
cool. Yeah.
So I think the next thing that for me that makes it a really great day, and so many guides will say this, is when it comes together. And that sounds really simple, but coming together is like you have the X's and O's on the chalkboard in the locker room, and the angler has to do her job, and the guide has to do her job, and the fish has to do her job. And when that all happens, everybody's done their job, the amount of fun that just is like Big Bang Theory is incredible. So I think that three-legged stool doesn't, if you lose one of those things, it doesn't mean you'll have a bad day. The fish didn't participate, then doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad day. But when you're standing on top of that three-legged stool and just
Yeah. Cheering them on. Is that right?
Yeah.
How good can the fishing be?
So let's see. That's such an interesting question because comparatively, I mean, I guess getting back to expectations, if you really want to catch like a massive brown trout, it's obviously not the place. So you already know that because we don't have brown trout in the system. If you want to see a massive fish, we've got lots of big bull trout. We don't target them because it's not legal. They're listed species, but we see them. They'll come like check us out a fair amount. So you
Really?
see some big bull trout. There are legal bull trout fisheries around us. The South Fork of the Flathead has a catch card season in the early summer, and you get a special catch card from the Forest Service, and you can target bull trout on the South Fork of the Flathead, and there are great guides who do that specific thing. It's a little more like saltwater fishing in terms of or I'd say more like steelheading in terms of the return. You might not catch a lot of bull trout, but that's your expectation, is that
Right.
you might catch one, 30+ inch bull trout, which is that crazy apex predator kind of a experience. So that's awesome. And then up in Fernie on the Elk River and the Lower Bull River and the Wigwam and Michelle, and those are all legal bull trout fisheries as well. And that's just a couple hours north of us.
That's up in BC, right? Fernie, yeah.
Yep. Fernie, British Columbia. Yep. And so those are great spots to catch really big fish. We have big cutthroat. So it depends on just your perception of what a big fish is, but we have really nice cutthroat. So I would say it's a big fish numbers place. You catch a lot of fish. I haven't, and again, knock on wood, like I don't see people get skunked. Everybody, you'll always catch fish essentially. Now next trip, somebody's gonna
Yeah,
get
right.
but it's a high success rate of catching fish. That's not really how I fish it. My style is more like I said, like the X's and O's on the chalkboard. It's like stopping above a piece of water that I feel is going to be really successful for a nice fish, for like the fish that I would love for us to catch as a team. And then we talk about exactly how that's going to happen. So it's probably going to be pretty dynamic where I'm like, okay, so we're going to run this rapid. I'm going to turn the boat around backwards. I'm going to give 3 pulls up into the eddy. As soon as I do that, I'm going to flip the front end around so that you're going to get a stream cast.
You explain this to the client. This is what's going to happen.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm like talking kind of like this sometimes. So I have to say it a few times because I'm so excited. And I'm like, you're going to have to do a backhand cast with your right hand so that you can get over where the wind is so that we can get that mend. And as soon as that mends, you're going to get 3 strips, and then line's going to come tight, and it's going to be the crowd goes wild. So it's like really talking it out for that one specific problem. Is like if you're a climber, and you're
Sure.
kind of figuring it out. So
have a plan.
And I'm pretty confident there's fish there. And sometimes it's because I can see them feeding, just like your sight casting. But other times it's just the habitat just really lends itself to that
Fishy.
is where the fish is going to be.
Yeah.
So instead of spray and pray all the way down and then maybe catch the fish, I really prefer to like pick out the ones that we want.
Huh. Okay.
And have a plan and make it happen.
And spend some time in the better spots.
Yeah, totally. And in fact, I like to fish shorter miles distance so that we can take our time. So we can scout. A lot of times we get out and hike and look at the water that we're going to fish and just kind of like stalk and, spot and stalk and just watch. And that's really fun. I have some really fun sight casting spots. We get up on a cliff and have lunch and take our time watching the cutthroat come from the bottom of the river, and they're coming up 20 feet. You could see them come up in the clear water and eat,
On
caddis on
top.
the surface. Yeah.
Is it a lot of dry fly fishing? Like I said in my intro, or is it you're doing a little bit of everything?
It is mostly dry fly fishing for
Okay.
the fun of it. Like,
Yeah.
we recognize that most fish are eating subsurface. So you could nymph all summer if you wanted to, but I guess if you want to, if somebody wants to nymph all summer, I'm not the guide who's like, no, we dry or die. It's their day, but I'm going to advise that there's a lot of fun to be had in seeing fish come up, through this gin clear water and
Yeah.
eat a bug on the surface. So it's most people like that. And so it's so clear and beautiful. And to watch the fish, the dry fly fishing is all time. Plus, if you're nymphing, you're probably getting bobber eats. I mean, it's like we nymph in the spring, because it's not super clear and because fish are lethargic. They're colder and they're just kind of like not quite ready to look up yet. And so we are, we are nymphing and kind of going subsurface in the spring. But last Sunday, and it was warm and the river's not totally clear, but it's like not muddy. And I had bobber eats.
Oh, you were out in March. We're into March recording this, folks. You were out fishing.
Yep.
And did okay.
Did okay. Yeah, it's
Good.
really interesting. We have fluvial and adfluvial cutthroat. So our fish are moving out of the system, either into their tributaries, like on the Middle Fork, in the wintertime, or into the big lake. The fish from the North Fork are mostly moving into Flathead Lake in the wintertime. And so in the spring, what happens is the tributaries are off limits for fishing until the third weekend of May, but they're coming from those tributaries. They're moving to kind of check out the rivers, and they'll kind of move out and be in the mouth of those tributaries in the rivers. So in the spring, we're kind of like looking for some of those spots. And then for the fish that have moved into the big lake, they're normally kind of moving up after. This is anecdotal. This is just me after many years of experience talking about what I see. And that's, they're moving up the system when it gets warm in the spring. And for me personally, if it's been warm and sunny for 3 days, that's when I go out 3 days straight. But if it's like warm, cold, warm, cold, warm, cold, like they're not moving up yet. They're still hanging out in the lake where they have plenty of food and more moderated temperature.
Yeah.
And same thing with if runoff is being crazy and everything, like it's not the place where we're fishing like a muddy river.
Right.
So yeah, last weekend for sure it was mostly recon, just checking out to see, and they had moved up from the big lake and maybe moved out of some of the tribs, and they'll probably go back in. They did, because that was like a false spring. And so then we got our second winter, it got cold, they moved back down.
Oh,
They're
interesting.
moving up for sure.
Well, when does the river actually clear? If you get a little muddy in the spring, then like in May, when does it clear early?
So such an interesting question, because traditionally we have a big runoff and one big runoff in May or early June. And then it starts to clear off, and it's clear at 4th of July on.
Yeah.
Now it's super different. We had 2 years ago, one of the biggest water years we've ever had. And so we had a big high water through most of June, good water in the beginning of July, and then like it just got hot and kind of the water is just gone. But then last year we had the lowest water we've had in 40 years, and we were fishing the river pretty much, there was no runoff. Like we were fishing it all through May and June. So, and booking trips, it was like off color and stuff, but like low, super low all spring and summer. So it's just been kind of wonky all across the board. It's just really in the weeds with what's going on. It's crazy. So this year we're set for another record low water year. And I think we'll probably not have a big runoff. And so we'll be fishing in May and June. But typically, yeah, we do have a runoff in May and June.
Yeah. I want to go back to when you were describing, what was going to happen when you were, rowing in that hole and explaining that to your clients. It made me think, are you the one who's training all, because you have 100 guides, don't you, in all your companies? Like who trains these guides? Is that you?
No, not really. Ish, kind of like We have an expert team of Swiftwater Rescue 3 certified instructors. So it's the kind of thing where you have to have a trainer instructor. So we have that at our company. We have guides who have undergone the Swiftwater Rescue 3 trainers certification, and then they're able to train guides in Swiftwater Rescue 3. And
Okay.
so all of our guides, including the fishing guides, not just the whitewater paddle raft guides, but fishing guides, all are Swiftwater Rescue 3 certified to run whitewater. So they all undergo recertification for Swiftwater Rescue 3, and then also guide school, essentially. And it's our in-house guide school. It's not the kind where like you go somewhere else for a couple weeks. For new guides, we train guides, whitewater guides who are just kind of never evers. And then also advanced training for returning guides. So they'll show up, they get classroom time where they're learning about how to read water and what all the terminology is, and just like dynamics of the river and everything, hydrology and entomology, and like an intense classroom time. And then they get intense river time, and they don't get to take clients until they've gotten checked off.
Oh, interesting.
So that means going with one of us who's kind of certified to be able to say they're okay to go
Yeah.
on the river by themselves. And a lot of times for the whitewater paddle raft guides, that can be dozen or more trips. Like they might have a ride along veteran guide ready to check them off as many times as it takes, until that guide is like, okay, they're good to go for sure.
You really invest in these. I mean, you probably hope they come back year after year if you're investing all that time in them, don't you?
Yeah, for the new guides, for whitewater paddle raft guides, we have them sign a 3-year contract. It's like, an
Oh,
on your
okay.
contract. We don't go
Yeah.
after everything,
Right.
but just kind of to think about, do you want this to be your life? And if so, we would like to have that commitment because of the investment in the training, and also just because we are stronger as a team when we're working together.
Right.
So yeah. And I'm not I don't really, for fishing guides, for sure, like I'm out there with them in the early season and stuff, but I'm not one of the trainers.
You're not okay. I thought you might give them some of your philosophy, right? If you're the
Yes,
outfitter, like
that.
this is what we believe in here. This is how we
Yes,
run our trips. This is how we treat our clients, that kind of thing.
I do that for sure. Like
Okay.
that's one of the things is, and the reason I'm kind of cagey about that is they're my peers. So I'm guiding with them every single day in the trenches. So we have amazing managers, trip leaders and river leaders, these lead guides who are kind of like setting up the day. They've got the whole schedule of the day. And so every day they're like, all right, guys, I'm going to give kind of a little morning talk, and here's what's happening out there today and everything. And I'm sitting with the guides hearing this and getting ready for the day. And so I'm kind of out there with the guides, which is just what I've always done and I love. For sure, I am talking with them and helping with them, and I have I'm the outfitter. So I'm like setting I think our high standard and philosophy, and then I'm teaching a fair amount of extracurricular classes with them too. Kind of we've got like a Know with the Flow series where we're trying to give them some history of the area, and we're talking about things this summer like mental health and mitigating stress in challenging environmental situations on the river, and high-level entomology classes from the University of Montana. Scientists come in, certainly scientists from Glacier National Park and from the Forest Service and the USGS. We have scientists come in and teach important classes about what's happening out there.
That's super cool. Can you talk about how guiding has changed over the years, and like maybe there's a new normal now for guides? Say a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think certainly for younger guides who are coming into it, they're not talking about the river the way that us older guides are. We say, oh, back in the day, XYZ, or when I first started, XYZ, and things have changed. But the newer guides have been living their entire lives with really challenging environmental situations. They've been living and operating in social and educational ways, and certainly now their professional river lives with climate change their entire lives.
Yeah.
And that's something to remember when we're like, oh, well, we want the young kids to learn this stuff. And I'm like, they have been living under these new conditions for their entire lives. it might be new to us, but if you're 23 years old, you've been dealing with climate change your entire life. And so now as a guide, really you're an expert in what so many of us old people are saying is this new normal. So one of the ways that we really try to harness that and this new normal and the guides who are experts in it is a program called Guiding for the Future. And the Fishing Outfitters Association of Montana, or FOAM, where we get our insurance through, and it's kind of their guides association in Montana, teaches a class that's a very intensive, high level, 3-month long computer class through Montana State University. They take in the off season, and then a 3-day practicum on the river with 25 other guides from across the area. And they're learning so much about climate change, but also social issues that they're running into on the river. Like, what if you get somebody on your boat who's having some personal challenges, and how do you talk with them about it? And how do
Interesting.
you mitigate stress among your guide team? And what do you do about political differences? And like, just some really kind of, yeah. And I think just that is being a better guide, being a better human, because you're not only dealing with entomology and hydrology and ecology things that fishing guides should deal with, you're also dealing with the world. And so this isn't guides getting on a soapbox and talking about their opinions. It's really being able to harness all of the dynamics that happen when you get somebody on your boat and you are in charge of making sure that you collectively as a team have an awesome day. And so Guiding for the Future has been a really great program. And so pieces of that new normal, or how things have changed in the way that I see it, are: one, we are getting a lot more sophisticated clients in terms of questions that they ask. Back when I first started, it'd be like, if they ask questions, you could be like, oh, the barometric pressure dropped, and they're like, oh, okay. Now there's no bullshitting. Like,
Yeah.
people really,
They're on the internet or something. I don't know.
yeah. And a lot of times, like, they've fished all over and they've looked into it and they know the answers and they want to talk with you about it. So it's more like
Okay.
of a discussion, as opposed to like, why aren't the fish biting? And is this a good place to cast and stuff? They know a lot. I think the clients today are far more sophisticated, and we like to tease clients all the time, like all the silly things that clients would say, like, when did the deer turn into elk? And when does the Park Service let the animals out in the morning? Those are all just like jokes, and there are some things that get said that are real. But for the most part, it feels like we as guides have to have a higher level intelligence bank
Yeah.
to be a guide out there. So a lot of times, like, I tell guides, they don't have to know everything, but they should be able to be prepared with some resources, some places to send people with answers. Or if they're not comfortable answering, just say, like, there are some amazing, this is a huge outdoor classroom. We're surrounded by the Park Service, Forest Service, the USGS, and like some of the best answers are right here, or are, all these scientists are right here. And so being able to put people in the right direction, I think, is something that we really try to do. And we just really try to have continuing education and educate ourselves. So that's one thing that has changed, is having a more sophisticated clientele, or more interested clientele. Maybe
Yeah.
they aren't more sophisticated. They're asking more challenging questions.
Curious. Yeah.
And then the second thing is, what happens when they're asking those, there's some stress involved. Like, some of those answers are hard and sad, and bad things are happening in a lot of different fisheries, and that can be stressful to guides. And then the guides are in constant transition season to season. So another of our new normals is dealing with stress that I didn't experience before as a young guide, but that I'm seeing among our young guides now. In fact, there's a term for it that's used widely now, which is eco grief. So, I've made this analogy before, where if you were to look at the river as an office, it's not a climate controlled office. It can just be wild all over the place, where one day it's perfect 68 degrees. And then suddenly the next day it's 29 degrees. And then the next day it's 100 degrees. And then your office is on fire. And then it's flooded. And then it's full of mud. And then it's full of rocks. Then it's dry as a bone. And then you don't know if you're going to even get a trip the next day because it might be smoky. It might be flooded. It might be, it's just so unstable.
Because of climate change, Hilary? You've seen all that pick up because of climate change?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, this talk that I did yesterday in Dillon, at the end of the talk, somebody said, well, you never mentioned climate change. Is climate change not a problem? And I hadn't noticed, I didn't mention it because it is such a thread woven through every single one of the pieces of our lives as anglers. So it kind of cracked me up that I didn't even mention the word climate change because it's so much a piece of everything. It is everything. And so that also is the new normal where we're not saying, well, there's this climate change happening. That's like the no duh. I mean, it's been, like I said, these kids' entire lives that it's been overwhelming proof, not just overwhelming evidence, but overwhelming proof, and that the science is clear. So these kids the guides aren't questioning it ever. It's more like dealing with it. And so in so many ways, we're trying to be in like a mitigation mindset. We'd love to fix it and change it, but we're in an adaptation reality. So the kids are like trying to adapt to these challenges. What they really want to do is work on mitigation. They want to be part of the solution and solve it, but they're having to be in an adaptation reality with the mitigation mindset. So that's
What were you doing on Capitol Hill? The Senate Budget Committee?
yeah.
What were you doing there?
So I was testifying before the Senate Budget Committee, and the topic is the impacts of climate change on the outdoor economy. So it was, they're trying to balance the budget and look at pieces of the budget that really matter from coast to coast. And my testimony was about how important the outdoor industry is to the economy. So for us, it's the whole economy. I mean, when you're in this vacuum, of course, it's like this whole economy, but kind of giving a look from rural America and how important the outdoor rec economy is to us. And then hoping that they see that in a big picture, it is, it's really important. I mean, I think it's tricky to know what the result is, but I just keep doing it because it's like, well, there's nothing lost. They can listen or not listen, but if I don't go, there wasn't an opportunity for them to listen.
Good for you.
And I have seen it work.
I don't suppose they paid for your plane ticket out there, did they?
No, yes, actually. So
really?
I'm on the board of Protect Our Winters, and Protect Our Winters picked up the travel for that. Good. But they, as in like the Senate Budget Committee, no.
No. Did they? I mean, were they nice to you? Did they kind of grandstand, or were they nice to you?
I mean, they don't have an obligation to be nice. I'm not there to be buddies with them. We didn't go like have a beer after or anything like that. I didn't expect them to be nice, but in particular, one senator was horribly mean, not to me, but to another person testifying. And that is kind of part of, I think, how things are in Washington. I mean, any of them could have been horribly mean or really nice. And so seeing that happen in front of my eyes, I wanted to throw my body in front of this thing happening, and
Stop.
like he would, particular senator was super rude to an Olympian skier. And I'm like, he's the red, white, and blue.
Yeah, he's skiing for our country.
3 years old. Yeah. So
was that before you went?
It was after I went.
Oh, after. Okay.
Yeah, I testified, and then so everybody just goes. There were 5 people testifying on the panel that I was on. This panel on how the outdoor rec economy is impacted by climate change, and so anybody can be on the panel who's invited by the committee. So I believe we were invited. The skier kid and myself, we were invited by Chairman Whitehouse. I believe we were asked to come by Protect Our Winters. but they have to get an invitation by the committee. So I think Protect Our Winters got it, and then we were asked to join. So yeah, so we each testify, and then the whole committee can ask questions of anybody. They can ask any question to anybody. And so a little bit, I was like, when I was playing, softball and PE in school, I'm like, don't hit it to me, don't hit it to me. So I was and then other times I'd be like, oh, bring it on. I was kind of feeling like, I don't want to answer, I do want to answer,
Yeah.
So.
Well, you could just kind of do this and point to the other 4 people. You take this one. That was the tough one. You take that one.
Yeah.
I bet you do fine. You're very poised. So, folks, if you haven't already noticed, Hilary's a pretty good storyteller. And just kind of going through some of the articles she's written. She's written about booze, brazen men, and the importance of bait fish, all in one article, right? Vacations turned into volunteering opportunities. Teenagers, wild fisheries, and motherhood, all in one article, right? One of my favorites was the story about the fly shops rallying to save the Madison River the day the Hebgen Dam gate broke.
Yeah.
And everybody was panicked. And I guess I just wanted to ask you a little bit about what motivates you to write as much as you do with all the things you got going on.
Oh, I think it's not just being a storyteller at heart. Like, I do want to sit around a campfire and BS with my friends, or sit on a tailgate and stuff, but it's also classic journalism in terms of wanting to get the facts down on paper. So get actual facts, including the fact of how people feel. Like, this is really how they feel and where they are at this point in their lives, and like anthology and kind of just getting it down in a record. It's like getting a record of something that happened and knowing where you were at that place in time. And that's kind of how I feel about journalism in fly fishing, is maybe when you look back at it years from now, you'll go, oh, wow, yeah, that happened. And this is how I felt about it when it happened. And this is how these people felt about it. And these are the facts that happened. And you can compare that to either how things are now or how you might feel about a different situation. So I think it's just wanting to get the facts down about something. And it's not to prove anything that somebody's right or somebody's wrong, but it's just to go, this is a real thing that happened at this time.
Yeah.
And let's get it down on paper so somebody can read about it.
And to do it with a story, right, makes it memorable, how people felt, and you kind of weave the story into the facts. If you just laid the facts out, you just do it in a couple of bullet points and be done. But, you write a story about it and people will remember that.
Yeah, I think hopefully what I want is for people to relate it to a story that they have. I want it to trigger storytelling. I think storytelling begets storytelling. And I don't really care that people care about my story. I don't want, that's not what I care about or what I want. I mean, if it entertains them, that's great. I do want to entertain somebody, but I don't care that they care about me and my story. I want them to make it remind them of their story, or inspire them to tell their story, or at least help it be relative to something in their life.
Yeah.
And I think if that can happen, then they'll go, oh yeah, that's the same as like my dad, or oh, my kid went through the same thing, or it's like, oh, my fishery is really similar. Like, being able to let them have their story is I think the thing.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. I love that. And speaking of stories, can I ask you I've heard you tell some great stories. I've been online, and I know you've got some epic fishing stories. I'd love to have you to do one. And I can think of one about a guy in Estonia.
Oh,
a really big guy in Estonia, but you may have a different one. Anyway, Can you give us some kind of an epic story from your life of fishing and guiding?
Right. Well, it's funny because a lot of times, so many of the stories that I remember that stand out to me are OPF, other people's fish. I always
Oh,
say,
really? Yeah, you're a
other
guide.
people's stories,
Yeah.
because somebody's told them to me and it really stuck with me. So I end up telling a lot of stories about other people's fish or other people's stories. But I think, the short version of what happened to me in Estonia is not that easy to tell. That's definitely like an around the campfire story of solo fly fishing in Estonia with a big guide who ultimately I thought when we were maybe trespassing a little bit and maybe gonna get attacked by some wild boars back there, and we're in these fishing among these like bombed out castles, and it would a lot of really wild and crazy things happen, including like our guide lunch being a bunch of like stinky fish in a styrofoam and then a big jug of homemade Estonian moonshine.
Really? That was,
Yeah,
oh,
which is
geez.
guidelines, which was awesome. I loved it, and I like went for it, and it was kind of thought, no, maybe I could serve this to my people. But then after a whole bunch of wild and crazy things happen, at the end of the day, he hands me his card, and he turned out to be the minister of fishing for
The
the country.
minister of fishing for the whole
Yeah,
country.
Mhm.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, it was awesome. It was great. But I love that story. I've had clients who have really surprised me. There's one woman in particular who was a goddess. I mean, this was by far the most beautiful woman I've ever met. She's this gorgeous Indian American woman, and I mean East Indian American, and a billionaire. So she was on Wall Street, and she was a legit billionaire at 28 years old, super genius, accomplished in every way. I think she's like a classical ballerina, and like just the most fantastic person I think I met. And I'm just like spellbound by her. She's talking, it was almost like I could not believe that she was human, because she was so smart, so articulate,
Had
so
it all.
beautiful, so talented, had it all. And she brought like some special snacks for us, like that she had brought from New York, and prosecco, and like kind of this laid out all this food and snacks, and we were having fun, and it was a great day. She'd never fly fished, and she had been sent there by her company as a de-stress program, which happens all the time. Like sometimes somebody's going to get fired, they get put on a path of improvement, and it's like they get sent to a retreat. I'm like, don't send them freaking fly fishing.
Don't send them to me,
Like that's
please.
the worst way to chill out. Like you think it's
If you've never done it, whitewater
yeah,
rafting,
never done it. Oh, and they send them with me on like a whitewater fly
high
fishing trip.
adrenaline.
Like,
Yeah.
they are not gonna get stress-free.
We're
Like
going to wind them up.
yeah, I'm gonna wind them up. So, but it happens all the time. So anyway, she's on this boat with me, and every so often I'm pulling over and I'm saying, well, do you have to pee? Because I have to pee. I'm gonna jump out of the boat and run up into the woods and pee. And she's like, no, I don't have to pee. And I'm like, okay. And so
What's with this
she's
lady?
drinking prosecco, and like and every few miles I'm like, all right, well, I have to pee, and you can go upstream or downstream. Nope, she doesn't have to pee. And she didn't pee the entire day. And I was like, wow, like she's either super dehydrated or she actually
Yeah,
is
drink some.
not human, because she
Yeah,
doesn't
right?
pee. So at the end of the day, we get out of the boat, and there's a porta potty at the takeout, and she goes into the porta potty and she comes back, and her cart is there, and she's gonna leave, and she says, do you have garbage? And she hands me this bag, and I said, oh, I'll throw it away for you, no problem. And she gives me a big tip, and she leaves, and I'm still so impressed. I'm like, what did she give me?
Gotta
And I
look.
look in, and it's an adult diaper,
Oh,
full,
really?
full, and full of all of it.
Really?
1 and 2.
Wow.
True story, yeah.
Who does
And
that?
oh, come on. It wouldn't say in a million years.
No, right?
Yeah.
No,
So
I didn't want to know who it is, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
no, yeah.
that's rare.
So but the way I see it, and I did some research after, so she hands me this throwaway, and I did some research later, because I was kind of joking around, like, well, maybe that's a hack. Like, the more I've told the story, people are like, great idea. I should wear Depends on the river, And so I was like, I wonder if it was like in Manhattan Outdoors blog or something, like,
Where it depends.
Yeah. But I think the reason that she was doing it is because when I went down this rabbit hole to find out if this is like a thing people do, I started to see that really high level women in Wall Street or in like a big corporation, when they leave the boardroom, people will do business without them. Or there's a perception that people will do business without them,
yeah,
that like
sure.
men talk or something. And so they never want to leave a boardroom. They want to keep their seat at the table. So they've worked really hard to get that seat at the table, and then they're there and they don't want to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
So they are literally wearing adult diapers so that they don't miss a thing, and also so that the deal doesn't happen without them. or
Yeah.
whatever is going to happen, that they always keep that seat at the table. And I read about that. This is anecdotal. I don't know if this is true. I haven't actually talked to somebody who has done this, but I did read about it when I was trying to find out why she would not just go in the woods.
Right.
And this is what I found, is that in high level situations in some big business or Wall Street, or like where women are crushing it,
Yeah.
they don't want to leave because they don't want to have something happen without them.
Or if it was my wife, she'd be afraid to go into the woods because somebody said there were bears, wolves, and a bunch of other things up in there.
There's
She's
that.
no way she would walk up into those woods.
That was my initial thought, and that's what other people have said. But this one was so remarkable. She wasn't afraid of anything.
Yeah,
I was
right.
like, I think she could do it.
Yeah. All right, now Hilary, I got it. This is getting a little personal. You ever peed in a boat?
Oh, for sure. So when I first started guiding on the Middle Fork of the Salmon during the deadhead, the first time I did it, I'm running it legit cold. Like I'd never seen it in my life. Like I'd never been on it when I was guiding the deadhead. I'd been on it, training like on the lower river for the clients, but that top part for the deadhead, I'm just running it cold. We also can't follow another guide's line super closely, because if they get stuck, it's pylon, you don't want to, you want to give them space. So it's really hard to follow another guide's line in certain rapids. There's this called the chutes. And as I'm going into it, I have to pee before every big rapid, just like pre-run pees, like just because you're like
A little nervous, yeah.
pipes, yeah. And so I'm like, no, I really have to pee. And I'm looking at the eddy, and I could catch the eddy and I could get over there and get out, but I was so worried about not getting back in the line I've chosen.
Yeah.
I'm just like, just go, man. Just go. Self-bailing boat. Nobody's on this boat. Like it's just me.
Okay.
And yeah, so I haven't peed in my boat with clients, but I for sure, running Middle Fork of the Salmon,
It
have
can
done
happen.
it multiple times. Yeah.
It can happen. Okay, now I have to ask you, you're a mom, you're a writer, you run a couple companies, you're an outfitter, you guide every day in the summer. How do you must be an expert in either delegating or time management. Like, how do you do all this? What's your secret?
No, there's no. Like the people who I ask that about are like moms who have small children and they're kind of doing it all. Like they're volunteering at church and at the school and running their businesses and have small children and like, doing all the domestic things and probably taking night classes. I mean, what I do, I feel like is kind of all together in the same vein. So it might seem like a lot because it's connected organizations and
Yeah.
things, but it really is kind of the same thing. Also, I learned from my parents to play hard and rest hard. Rest is really important. And so work hard, play hard is something people say, but just being able to allow yourself to rest, I feel like I do. Sometimes the kids think I don't, but like I feel rested, like I feel good. And I love to hang. I love to play. I love to, I'm not work. I like to have me time too. And so I think for me, there's no special, there's nothing special. It's just having the things I do be kind of closely related to.
Yeah.
Like I take sacrifices because I'm not helpful in our school system. Like I wish, like in the Columbia Falls school system that I graduated in, I'm not on the school board. I'm on all these other boards. But what I did a long time ago was decide that environmental issues and conservation are the thing I say yes to, which means I have to say no to judging the speech and debate. Every year, like they look for volunteers to judge speech and debate tournaments at the high school, or like to volunteer for swim team fundraising, or coaching kids or whatever. I feel guilty about saying no to a lot of local community things, but that's when I really would be strung out and stressed and it wouldn't be good.
Tell me about, you've got 3 adult kids, they're all guides. How has kind of your parenting philosophy changed as they've gotten older?
Yeah, well, that's interesting because I think you're always a parent, but when they became adults and we became coworkers on the river and their peers, I think offering them a different kind of respect. I guess I've always really respected them. I respect them as humans. I respect them as adults. But then suddenly when they're your coworkers, especially in the upper Middle Fork guiding with Killian, he's 24 years old and he's a great guide, but like we really have each other's lives on the line. Like I rely on him to save me. He relies on me to save him. It's a different level of respect. So there's Killian, my stepson's 24 years old, and he and I guide together a lot. Like he's a
Cool.
great fishing guide, whitewater guide. And then Ella, she's 21. She's a multi-day whitewater trip leader. So she is doing gear boats and doing the overnight stuff. This summer, she's taken a new job at Schaefer Meadows. That's kind of that headwaters area in the Bob Marshall
Okay.
Wilderness. And she's doing an internship for invasive plants for the Bob Marshall Wilderness Foundation. So she's not going to be on the river with me this summer. She'll be up there working that internship for her sustainability degree. And then Delaney, who has been a casting instructor and working in the fly shop in West Glacier
Nice.
the last several years. She's 20 in May, and she's also taken another job this last year. She is works at Fish for Change, which is an international fly fishing program for kids. And so she's taking groups of kids to Costa Rica and Honduras, Bahamas, Mexico. So she's doing that this summer. So a couple of them are not, they're doing fishing. And so it's also this other level of respect where I'm like, oh, wait, you're your own human, like you're your own person who can make your own choices and follow your own path. So it's, I think, super cool that they're still in fly fishing and in the outdoor industry, but they found their own way to do it. And I think that part of parenting, you asked me about how parenting has changed for that, is not putting myself in there all the time. Like I mean, really removing myself and my opinions and more just offering them support and giving them my opinion when it's asked. Because I think before it was like really helping guide them. Okay, well, you could do this. And this is like, I even typed out like a trip leader sheet and like, let me look at your checklist. Did you get, sleeping bags? And did you know? Okay, well, here's what, and holding their hand a little more. But now it's like, oh, they're doing stuff I can't do and I don't do. And they've taken things to a new level that's beyond my expertise. Like, I don't know how Delaney is navigating Honduras. I've never been to Honduras. And I don't know anything about what Ella's studying in the Bob Marshall Wilderness in terms of invasive plants, but I'm super interested. So I think trying to like eat some humble pie that I haven't done very well in the past is kind of new, especially with like Killian when we were in the upper Middle Fork and he was going to run the first big rapid by himself the first time, and clients have walked around and we scout it and he sees his line and he's like, okay, I'm going next. And he goes back up to hike up to get in his boat to run it. And I start following him because I'm going to tell him what to do. I'm like, okay, don't forget, you need to pull with the left, push with the right. When you come up to the house rock, you're going to get 2 seconds and you're really going to have to reef on it. Then you're going to have to drift for half a second. And then you're just going to have to ship your oars, get around that rock and push. This is what I'm going to tell him. And as he's walking up there, he kind of like stops behind this rock and he's got his helmet on and he starts hitting his helmet and he's going, you got this, you got this, you got this. Come on, Killian, you got this. And I'm like, okay,
he's pumped up anyway.
He's got a pep talk on himself. I'm not going to come in there and screw that up. He scouted it. He found his line. He's pumped himself up. He's going to crush it. And he greased it.
Did he? Did he? Good.
Perfectly. Like he ran it. And I thought, God, I really could have screwed him up because he would have listened to me and he would have tried to row it how I row it. And he's stronger than me and he rows differently. So I really could have screwed him up by telling him to do it like I do it. And he did it like he does it. And ultimately he had chosen a different line than I chose and his run was cleaner. So
no kidding.
That was a good moment for me as a parent too, to be like, okay, we're peers,
Yeah. We learn as parents, sounds like. Yeah. So what's next for Hilary?
Well, I have a movie coming out called The Tengu Club. That's
Really?
it's about the Japanese American fishing club in Elliott Bay in Seattle. And it's the post-internment fishing club of Japanese Americans that's the longest running fishing club on the West Coast. And my uncle wrote a little book about it. And so I worked with some friends of mine at the Farm Club production company and made a pretty cool movie called The Tengu Club.
Yeah.
And it'll be coming out. I think we're screening it for the first time in Austin I think in May.
All right. Now, did you write and direct this, or what was your role?
Yeah, so it's my first time as a co-director. So
Cool.
I've done a fair amount of producing, but this is my first time as a co-director, not solo director. In fact, as a director, like Britt, the actual director who's so good, is gracious enough to call me a director, but really like it was, it's all him and I'm just kind of helping, I guess.
Well, I'll bet you do a little more than that.
But yeah, it's one of my family's stories. So my uncle is a longtime president of the club, and I've just been fascinated by Japanese internment and the lack of information I've had as Japanese American my entire life about it, and kind of the forced and chosen assimilation of Japanese Americans. And so it was supposed to be a fishing movie, but really it's about the multi-generational gap in Japanese American culture and how lacking I am in my personal life, and kind of tracing that and how that can happen, how I can be half Japanese, have very little cultural influence.
And you're talking about the internment, you're talking about the World War II, and they gathered all the Japanese Americans and
Yeah.
stuck them in prison camps.
I mean,
Yeah.
just imagining that level of incarceration, full concentration camps, and how lives were ruined, and how many people suffered and died,
Unbelievable.
and then the aftermath of that, and Japanese Americans and their reaction to it afterwards, and very kind of looking at what that means now.
Good for
And
you, Hilary.
what I didn't know about it, and then what I know about it now, and what I still don't know. And so it's a history piece. It is a fishing movie, but it's more, I think, about kind of social issues that resulted from that horrible time.
And Hilary's got another movie. I don't know how many you've done, but you have a movie called Drop, which you trace a drop of water all the way from the top of, I don't know if it's one of the Flathead River forks, all
Yeah,
the way
from the top of the Continental Divide.
all the way. It's sort of a conservation movie, right? And what people
Yeah.
are doing along the way down the river.
Yep,
Pretty
exactly. Yeah. It's about, following a drop of water from the top of the Continental Divide to the Pacific Ocean, and really looking at the economic impacts of public lands and water along the way, and just kind of the lives that are impacted by that drop of water, and how those people are also trying to make sure that that water keeps flowing.
cool. That's really neat. That's really neat. Okay, 2 more questions. These are
Okay.
food questions. Always got to get them in at the end of the show, Hilary.
Okay.
Your favorite shore lunch?
Oh gosh. At Glacier Anglers, our shore lunches were a lot better before COVID. Then it suddenly had to be all packaged. So, because you couldn't touch, we used to lay everything out and do all this stuff. And so I think shore lunches in general across the country have greatly
Yeah, I've
suffered
heard that. Yeah.
since COVID. But for personally, like when we go on a fun one that's not just a client trip, but just a fun family trip, I love like the epic charcuterie boards that
Oh, do you?
that
Okay.
I've gotten really good at. It's very trendy, like everybody's into charcuterie, but it is such a fun way to eat on the river. And just like Patagonia provision stuff, like I love those little, the cans of sardines and the oyster, all that stuff, like yummy. So yeah, so I think charcuterie is my favorite thing to
Love
eat
it.
on the river. The overnight trips, all of the food that happens in Dutch oven cooking is my favorite food on the planet. I
Yeah.
love, and it's the classic stuff like lasagnas and upside down pineapple cake, and the classics. But then just really creative Dutch oven cooking, I appreciate, and we do a lot of
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
everything we're making on overnights is Dutch oven cooking. So love that. Yeah, and I think charcuterie is my favorite. For our clients who come on the river, I don't think that our shore lunches are very remarkable. It's like sandwiches. So
Okay. After you get off the river, your favorite place to go for a bite to eat and something to drink at the end of a day on the river?
yeah. Well, for starters, for guides, we go to the barn and we have kind of a post-mortem at the barn. This is, where we have all the boats parked in the trucks and all the guides are coming in together. So for starters, we'll have a beer and a snack there together and kind of talk about the day. And for me, that's a really cup filling time. Like that's all the funny stories, and that's just like relaxing and kicking back and just enjoying each other, and also a time to pick up on other stressors that some guides are having and see how we can support each other. And so I love like and then that doesn't last very long because suddenly then people have, things they have to do, but it's a great moment. Then after that, I'm meeting up with my family, and usually there's like a saloon right next door to my fly shop in Columbia Falls. So I'll head back, downriver to Columbia Falls from West Glacier, and Evan's in the fly shop and closing up the shop. And usually like I'll be off the river before he's done closing the fly shop. So I'll go in there and hang out there, and everybody's doing the same kind of thing. Like at the barn, guides are coming in from the lower river, telling stories, having a beer, talking about their day. And so I get to do that same postmortem, we call it, after that.
Yeah.
And then we'll go eat unhealthy things next door at Guns Grill. Yeah.
Okay.
Like I eat super healthy, like during the day. And then at the end of the day, that's like typically just French fries. Like
Just cancel it all out.
Yeah. I know, I think I need the sodium. Like I'm like, I need
Yeah,
salt.
right.
So I'm eating a basket of French fries like every night.
It sounds good. Well, you've sort of been moving around quite a bit during the day, right? I mean, you're sort of getting your exercise in, so you might be able to.
Hungry.
You'd probably be okay. Hilary, thanks so much for being on the show. It was an absolute blast to have you on here.
Oh, no problem. Anytime. Super fun for me. Thanks for having me.
You're an American treasure on many levels. You
Thank
really
you.
are. Yeah.
Thanks.
How can people get in touch with you?
Oh, I'm pretty easy to find. They can go to Glacier Raft Company's website. Just Google Glacier Raft Company or Glacier Anglers or Larry's Fly and Supply with one R. And those will take them right to me. I'm pretty easy to find on Instagram. I'm outside Hilary, and or Larry's Fly. It's also my fly shop. Yeah.
All right, there you go, folks. Check it out. Reach out to Hilary and her team, and I'm sure they'll get you hooked up on a trip. I wish you extraordinary success in all your adventures to follow. And folks, thank you for listening. And we'll be sure to post Hilary's contact info on the Destination Angler show notes. And maybe we'll get some exclusive pictures of this wonderful fishery from Hilary at some point. We'll put those up there as well, Instagram and Facebook. As always, you can DM me or email me comments and suggestions at shag50@gmail.com. If you like the show, please share it with a buddy. As always, our music is by our brothers Fountain, a great little band out of Colorado. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll see you again soon. Tight lines, everybody.
Well, I'll go from the land to the shining sea. But I know there's more to life than what the eye can see.